So I'm sure there are those cross-shopping between the M3 iPad Air and the A16 base iPads, so let's compare these and discuss whether it's worth paying the extra for the Air or not. Beginning with the design, these are both based on the chassis we originally saw with the 2020 iPad Air 4, but I can't blame Apple for recycling the same shell again and again because it's a practical design that works. The flat edges are easy to grip onto and of course helps accommodate the Apple Pencil, and yes, it would be nice if the bezels were thinner, but ultimately they serve a purpose. You can still place your finger somewhere when using the iPad. But coming to the actual display, there are some key differences. So both are 11 inches LCD, have a resolution of 2360 by 1640 with 500 nits of brightness, and supports True Tone. But the A16 iPad lacks an anti-reflective coating, it's not laminated, and also does not offer P3 support. Now out of those omissions, the only thing that really bothers me is the lack of an anti-reflective coating. These panels are bright enough indoors, but if you sit near a window or anywhere with harsh lighting, the display becomes super reflective, and that does get annoying. But yes, you can fix this by using a matte screen protector. The Apple Pencil experience is also slightly inferior on the base model because of the non-laminated display, but I will say unlike older base iPads, the air gap is not as noticeable on this, and also the lack of P3 support is absolutely not an issue. Both iPads lack 120Hz, which I know is going to bother the refresh rate nerds, but I'll be honest, iPadOS is fluid enough where I rarely notice a lack of 120Hz, and the Apple Pencil experience is unaffected by the lack of 120Hz. So yeah, 60Hz is completely fine, guys. You know what else I'll be fine with, guys? If you happen to click that subscribe button, of course. I would greatly appreciate it, and it would bring you the latest of Apple right to your subscription box, so please consider it. It would be appreciated. Join the Surround Byte gang now. Anyway, let's now move on to accessories, because this is another big difference between these iPads. So beginning with the pencil situation, the A16 iPad supports the USB-C Pencil and the first generation Apple Pencil, whereas the M3 iPad Air supports the USB-C Pencil and the Apple Pencil Pro. Now, because you don't get the Apple Pencil Pro on the A16 iPads, you don't get access to the new features that Pencil offers, like Apple Hover, a new squeeze gesture to bring up a tool palette, a gyroscope that allows you to rotate the pencil for brush tools, haptic feedback, and also Find My support. But to be fair, if you're just note-taking, the USB-C Pencil does the job, and by the way, I would completely avoid getting the first-gen Pencil because the charging method is a complete mess with you having to use a stupid dongle, so just go with the USB-C Pencil because it's cheaper, magnetically attaches to the iPad, and also charges via Type-C like the name does suggest. Keyboard-wise, the A16 iPad supports the Magic Keyboard Folio, whereas the M3 iPad supports the regular Magic Keyboards. This has been updated with a function row, and I much prefer the floating design of the Air's keyboards, and considering there's such a small price gap between these keyboards, I just wish Apple gave the base iPad Magic Keyboard support. Also remember, you can still get the last generation Magic Keyboard without the function row for less via third parties. I've seen it for as low as $100 on the refurbished and used market, and that is still compatible with the M3 iPad Air, so that's a terrific option as well. The Magic Keyboard Folio can also be found for less because it's been out for a while, but it's not seen as significant of a price cut, so ultimately I would get one of Logitech's offerings instead, which offers a similar experience for less. Performance-wise, we have the A16 in the base iPad with 6GB of RAM, and M3 with 8GB of RAM in the Air, and as one expects, the iPad Air is considerably faster. But does that actually make a difference when it comes to real-life usage? Not really. I know the inclusion of the M3 does mean the Air gets Apple Intelligence support, Pro Apps, and also Stage Manager, but these are things I can live without. Also, the A16 is no slouch. Both these iPads are great for regular tablet usage, and do remember you can still use apps like Procreate and LumaFusion on the base iPads. It's Apple's native applications that don't run on the regular iPad, but third-party Pro applications runs pretty fine on the A16 iPads. Though of course, I can't deny, for those who have heavier workflows, the additional performance the M3 offers does come in handy. And so essentially, to sum things up, for 90% of consumers, the A16 is more than fine, so make sure you know you're going to take advantage of the performance of the M3. If you're a student planning to use this for school, or you're just a regular consumer browsing the web and consuming content on your iPads, the base iPad is going to be plenty powerful, and because I'm a very light iPad user, I have been content with the base iPad for my usage. Now yes, I'm aware a more powerful chipset will give the Air the upper hand software-wise, both in terms of support and also access to newer features, But ultimately, I see the Air getting maybe 7 years of updates compared to 5 on the A16 iPad, so it's not a massive difference. Battery life is surprisingly a little worse on the M3 iPads compared to the A16 base iPads. I noticed the same with the older M2 and M1 iPad Air. Maybe it's the M series chipset using a little more power, but for most people's needs, these iPads are both fine endurance-wise at the end of the day. The M3 Air does have a faster Type-C port, and so whilst it does not offer Thunderbolt speeds, it transfers data up to 10 gigabits per second, which is very solid, and also does support displays up to 6K resolution. But if you're only using the port for charging, then the USB 2 speeds on the A16 iPads isn't going to bother you at all. Touching on the cameras, the rear camera is once again the same on both iPads, and I was certainly surprised Apple still did not bother to add a flash on the back of the Air when the Minis had one for years. But anyway, the camera here is fine. Apple does recommend you to add footage you record on the iPad to your Final Cut timeline, but please do not do this. Whilst it's not the worst camera in the world, the rear camera on these iPads should really only be used in a pinch for things like scanning documents. The front-facing cameras on both are the same and offer center stage, so it follows you around the room if you move, and they both have the camera in a landscape orientation. Speakers and mic-wise, there's no difference between these iPads, they're both very solid. The A16 iPad and the M3 iPad Air do not feature quad speakers like the iPad Pro, but it surprisingly gets close with 2 less speakers, and because they're a stereo pair, they're both great for watching movies where the mics have been great for calls. Moving to biometrics, they're also the same in this aspect, with both integrating Touch ID into the power button, and it's super reliable. Both support Bluetooth 5.3, but only the Air gets Wi-Fi 6E support, though there's not been a massive difference in terms of connectivity. Both have caused me no issues. Finally, both now come with a base of 128 gigs of storage. I'm glad the base model finally got storage boost, though the max you can get is 512 gigs on the A16 iPads, whereas you can get 1 terabyte storage if needed on the M3 iPad Air. So overall, for the $250 price difference, the M3 iPad Air is kinda hard to justify. Yes, the M series chipset and the display upgrades are appreciated, but for most iPad users, the A16 iPad does everything you need for much less. And even if you're someone who needs the additional performance for your creative workflow, I will mention the very similar M2 and M1 iPad Airs are often on discount, and so you could get those instead. They offer the same core experience for the most part, and I'll leave links below. But if your usage is very basic and you just do iPad things with your iPad like emailing, note-taking, watching movies, TV shows, web browsing, etc., then there's no point in getting the M3 iPad Air. Just get the A16 model and you'll be very happy with it. Also, the base iPad hands down has the best colors. I mean, just look at the difference between these blues. So yeah, the base iPad is terrific value, guys. And also, as I said, you can consider older iPad Airs if you want the advantages of the M series chipsets. Again, I'll leave links below. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. And thank you for watching.